Go for it.
Here we go. So this is my life. So this is the world, and the orange dots are all places where I have lived and some where Anne and I have lived. And so they're all places where we actually owned a home or rented a home. And then all the green dots are places where I did field work. So not just like a day's field work, but actually did a reasonable amount of field work with there and stuff and so on. So it's a bunch of different places. And it's actually not the whole story because I started my life in the UK. I was born in England, and I actually lived in a lot of places in England too. So I was born in England, right? And I was born back here in a place called Lincoln, or just outside Nottingham. Actually, my family's from Nottingham, so everybody knows what's important about Nottingham. It's Robin Hood. So that's where I'm from. But then my father kept moving, my family kept moving around, so I kept going with them. So I ended up living in all different places. Yeah.
Do you know how to shoot a bow?
Absolutely. It's kind of, if you're born there, you have automatic DNA. So I moved around. And so one of the reasons I moved around, my father actually was an archaeologist. So he had a lot of different jobs, did a lot of different things. And so I moved around, and then I left home and I carried on moving. So we'll get into that a little bit, and we'll start right at the beginning. So this was me a while ago. So I had a lot of different views on potential careers, and this is one of my early career plans. This is a job that no longer exists. This is a bus conductor. This is somebody who sells tickets to people when they get on and off the bus. And so I thought this was pretty cool, so I tried charging my family for moving around the house and so on. So it wasn't a big success. So I mentioned this is my father, and so he was the archaeologist, and these are some of his papers that he wrote on various things. And so his area of expertise was Roman and pre-Roman Britain. Yeah.
Francis Hugh?
Yeah. Actually, no, sorry, Frederick Hugh.
Oh. Okay.
And he didn't like Frederick, so he went in there Hugh. Yeah. So he concentrated on the end of the the very pre-Roman period, which was sort of Iron Age, when the Romans arrived in the UK, and then he sort of expanded out to look at all around Europe, Roman frontiers. So it's kind of the age of where the Romans got to. So he did many excavations and so on, and he knew quite a bit of geology. So he would tell me little bits of pieces about the rocks and so on. And he hired me a few times to work on his digs, and he paid me in pints of beer and a few other things. And I was the physical labor, so the grad students like you guys would be on the dig, and then he'd hire me and he'd tell me just to take off the top, so much of the trench, and then the grad students would come in and very carefully work away with their trowels. I still have these trowels here. So it's really cool. So this trowel, you can see the shape of this trowel. That was the shape, but my father wore it down by doing all this fine troweling. So it's pretty cool. So that's what gave me the idea of becoming a geologist. I think that's where I got the first inklings of being outside and working in the outdoors and the kind of learning about the rocks and so on. So not everybody thought I had great potential. Clearly my headmaster on the left thought I had a few issues. I probably had quite a lot of issues actually, and doubted my potential. Well, I think he thought my potential was probably okay, but I obviously had some issues. but he was good enough to shake my hand at the end of it all, so he must have thought I got there. I got there somehow in the end and so on. So you have your ups and downs in life, and no one's perfect, and I'm certainly not. And so then I became an undergraduate. So I actually surprised myself when I got into Oxford. So this is my undergraduate years at Oxford. So I looked a little different than I do now. And it was a little bit of a different era, but undergraduates are undergraduates, and it was the principles were still the same. This was we were leaving here on this trip for our first field trip. So we were leaving Oxford and we were driving up to Scotland, to the Isle of Arran, which is an island off the west coast of Scotland, just pretty close to Glasgow. And virtually all undergraduates in the UK go there for one of their first field trips because it's quite a small island, but virtually all of geology, about 500 million years of geology is exposed, nicely exposed around the shoreline, and there's hills, there's a tertiary igneous complex in the middle of the top. So everybody goes there and you get to see kind of everything in a week, literally in a week. And so we thought we were pretty cool. We were beer cans and all the rest of it and stuff. And off we went, we drove up through the overnight, arrived in time for the 7 o'clock ferry to take us to the Isle of Arran. Our professor joined us, and his name was Stuart McCurry, who's a paleontologist who did a lot of early work around plate reconstructions using paleontology. So a very cool guy. smoking a pipe, got on the ferry, went straight to the bar and ordered a double scotch. 7 a.m. in the morning. So suddenly, we didn't feel so cool anymore. We suddenly thought, whew! And then he took us out in the field for 12 hours. And we went on the foreshore and went walking some of the rest of the day. So that was a different era. You wouldn't do that now. Your professor wouldn't do that now, obviously, but it was a different time. Yeah.
Is that you all the way on the left of the bottom image? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's me. Yeah. And this is my friend James and Catherine.
Killer
This is
hair.
two of my fellow undergraduates at the time. And that actually was in Cambridge, so not in Oxford, but it's a place called Grantchester Meadows, which is featured in a number of famous songs and so on. Just a cool place outside Cambridge, and obviously the cows like it too. So that was my undergraduate, and that was the start of my undergraduate anyway. And picture on the top left is Bell. David Bell, thank you. Yeah. So David Bell. So when you go to Oxford, you actually get a professor as your tutor, as an undergraduate. You get assigned to a single professor. You're not the only one, but he has several of them. And David Bell was my supervisor, tutor, and so on. But he's an English petrologist, so he'd spent a lot of his career working in Greenland, looking at the Skagerrak complex and so on. Very, very cool guy. Wrote a book. Some of you may have used his book at some point. But he was the most soft-spoken, nicest man I've ever known. So he was very influential on me because he just had this way of getting you to do things without ever telling you to do anything. He just kind of wanted to do things because he would quietly suggest, John, it might be a good idea if you looked a little bit more closely down the right. Oh, yeah. He's an amazing guy. So these are field trips over there. This is my first introduction to an unconformity with that beautiful classic unconformity that we were standing on there. All good, diligent students, all looking very closely at the unconformity. We're working closely here on the beach, and I don't know what that guy was doing up in the top right, but there was something about falling down things that I was encouraged to do by one of my good friends, and he took all the photographs and I did all the stupid stuff. So that's the way it worked. This person here, this is a very good friend of mine, Kit Morehouse, and we shared an apartment together in Oxford, and we still are very good friends. So this is a picture of Kit and I, a couple of years ago, standing outside. This was our apartment in Oxford. So we had the upstairs floors in this house, and we had some interesting experiences that I'm not going to go into in that place. But Kit and I stayed very good friends, and Kit, amongst many things that he's a geologist. He joined the oil industry for a while, worked in Southeast Asia, then came back, moved to Wales, and actually ran a sheep farm for a while, and then actually had a job moving yachts around the world. He's a very accomplished sailor. So he would go to places, pick up a yacht, and sail the yacht to where the new owner wanted it to be. So we've done a whole bunch of sailing trips. Okay. So Kit has a remarkably less hair than he had, obviously, in the previous shots. I managed to keep some of mine. So as part of my undergraduate, in those days you had to do a thesis, an undergraduate thesis, but it had to be based on geologically mapping a specific area. And then you build your research, whatever it might be, around that area. You actually had to map, and those days it had to be 15 square kilometers. I don't know why it was 15 square kilometers, but it had to be 15 square kilometers. So you looked hard, kind of in your second year, for an area you wanted to go to, and put a 15-kilometer, whatever 3x5 box kind of on it, and said, oh, okay. And then you were supposed to consult a faculty member and make sure that it was sort of the geology was viable, the axis was viable, and there was actually outcrop. So you didn't just pick an area that had no outcrop. So 5 of us picked the Italian Riviera because we thought that seemed like a pretty nice place to go. And as you can see, there's a lot of good outcrop, so it met all the criteria. Unfortunately, there was a professor who actually did his PhD in this area, so he gave us, said, yeah, this is a good thing to do. So I mapped this
Your
area.
box has quite a lot of water in it, John. It was a 15 square kilometer area. Shift to, the whole box, okay. The study area.
No, sorry, that study box is not the study. Not my study, it was the kind
Just
of...
checking.
Just went on the beach.
Just checking.
So yeah, I did actually, this beach section here, I mapped the beach section on a Saturday morning in mid-August, and so that was an interesting experience, stepping over people and rock shards flying and people going, ah! So anyway, it's a fantastic area. This is an area of ophiolites, Jurassic ophiolites. It's a nap that's been thrust to the northeast, the Apennine naps, series of stacked naps and so on. This is the most westerly nap, and it contains this very well exposed ophiolite.
Did you
So it has-
produce a cross section of your study area?
I did. Yeah, but I don't have it with me, otherwise sorry. I know I should. It's terrible should map and not across it. Anyway, so it's a great place to map because it had really distinctive rocks. So if you're a geologist, you're learning. So these are ultramafics, kind of nice, but they all weather, these guys here, they all weathered really white, so you could see them on the hillside, across the hillside. And then the gabbros here were really coarse-grained, beautiful, ophelitic gabbros. The bright green here were basalts, beautiful pillar basalts, big pillars, sort of this size kind of pillows, bright red, and then they were capped by cherts which were bright red. So like visual geology was just, oh yeah, I could step in here and map, and there goes faults here, so it was fantastic. And then the whole lot was capped by a series of naps of flesh, sandstones and so on. So it was a fantastic area. We had a lot of fun. That's actually my sister. She was visiting at the time. She was living in Italy at the time. So she came to see me. Unlike me, both my sisters actually have very curly hair, and as you can see, I didn't get that gene. She has
Did you have like blonde hair?
I've been in the sun for the whole summer, so
On the Italian beaches.
it's working. It's a fantastic
Mental
opportunity.
note.
Exactly. Choose field sites wisely.
It's a great experience. So the area just to the south of here is what's called Chiquitera, which is a very famous area. At the time when we were there, it was most of the people who went there for the summer were Italians. It was just a local place, local beach that they would go to. Chiquitera now gets 1.5 million people visited in the summer because there's 5 little beautiful villages kind of tucked in on this coastline, and you can walk from one to the other. So it's become super popular, but it's just ridiculous. That wasn't the case when I was there. So great review. So I graduated, and the time I graduated, my class, about half my class actually left Earth Science. They went and did all sorts of other things. They became bankers and business people or whatever. And the other half, most of them went in the oil industry, but about a quarter of them went in the oil industry. So most of that meant being in the North Sea, because the North Sea was expanding at the time, so working on an oil rig and so on. And then the remaining quarter went into grad school. So it's and there was about 30 of us at the start. So I couldn't find a project at that time. It was quite difficult to get projects in the UK, so I ended up coming to the University of Toronto, so not far from here, 4 hours away. And I started my master's, but my master's was based on an area in Norway. So actually, when I left Oxford, I went straight to Norway rather than coming to Toronto and went in the field for 3 months. So this is the field area I worked in. It's this little village called Teck here, which had about 400 people in it, and it was a great little village. Every Wednesday night we had a dance. And the dance, everybody went to the dance, all 400 people, I mean, babies to grandparents, they all went to the dance. They all drank their home-brewed alcohol called Himmelbrand, and about 10 o'clock the young men all collapsed and fell over and got tossed out. And so by 10:30, myself, a friend who was working there in a similar area, and I who shared a caravan together, we were the last left standing males, so then we just danced for the next 3 hours. But we were only allowed ever to dance 2 dances with any women. It was just kind of the unwritten rule. You could have 2 dances and then you had to move. So we just got moved around by all ages of women to the dances. We could have different poker and all sorts. It was a great, fantastic time. So the thing I was working on here was a little nickel sulfide deposit in very deformed metamorphosed Cambrian rocks, schists and ephemerolites. And I was trying to understand it. And metamorphic rocks didn't suit me entirely. I was never completely comfortable that I could get my head around them or understand them. So it was it was a hard area to work in, but it finished. I got my master's, but I wasn't done with the topic. I was quite intrigued by the nature of these mafic and ultramafic intrusions in the caledonite orogeny. So I thought I'd go west and go to the Appalachians and look at similar kinds of rocks, but much less deformed in Maine. So my PhD was in Maine and continued to work on, again, the nature of a suite of mafic intrusions that run through the central Maine here. So this is Quebec, we're just over here. And I mainly worked on this one here called the Moxie Pluton.
Where did you do your PhD?
At University of Toronto.
At Toronto.
Yeah, so I just stayed
And
there.
your MS? Or
Yeah.
was it? Okay.
Yeah, so I did my MS there, so
Maybe I missed it.
Yeah, I said it, but I didn't say it quietly. So this guy was my supervisor. This guy's Tony Maldra. And so he was my supervisor at the University of Toronto, and so he came to visit us, and we're out in the field in North. So he stayed my supervisor for my PhD, and there he is again. So to get around, I did all my fieldwork in Maine by myself. I didn't have any support. So one of the things, I had to get to some of the islands in the lake. All lakes in Maine are called ponds, and Moxie Pond was one of the lakes. So I had to get to these islands and so on. So I bought a little kid's inflatable boat and did my fieldwork paddling around those, which was fine until I started collecting samples, because then the whole thing. Anyway, so when my supervisor came to visit Tony, I said, we're going to go to that island. He said, how are we going to get there? I said, well, I've got just the answer. So this is him in this kid's paddling boat.
You guys had to individually?
Yeah, we had to go individually. You go have a look, tell me what you see. And then we actually would decide we could actually go to this one outcrop together and collect samples. Unfortunately, there's no photographs of that, because that was pretty entertaining, because the whole thing was just sagging and falling apart. But I got the job done. I did my fieldwork, and I managed to work extensively in this area. And that's Tony again, Tony Norton. This is after I'd actually moved to Australia and he came to visit. And so he's a fantastic supervisor. Tony Norton, I don't know if any of you have met him. He's now mid-80s, something like that. So he's still active. He lives now in the UK. He's actually originally from the UK, and he went back there again. And he's still active, works on mafic ultramarine rocks, does a lot of work on the bushveld still. So, for me, he was a perfect supervisor, because he was always there when I needed him, and never there when I didn't need him, which was about 50-50. You know, I wasn't comfortable with him looking over my shoulder, but whenever I needed him, I could make an appointment, and he'd spend half a day with me. He was a tremendous person. So it all worked out, and this is not my story. This is a subsequent story, which I think is more or less makes sense. These are late synorogenic mafic intrusions, so they're quite deformed, although internally they're not. Internally they're intact, but the overall rocks around them and so on, some of the actual contacts are quite deformed. And so the sense is that these are late orogenic replacement of mantle melts into the crustal sequence during the Acadian part of the Appalachian erosion. So, I graduated. I had a PhD, which was a major surprise to me. Just in case you're ever wondering, I was stunned when they gave me my PhD. And I think that's quite a common phenomenon. You actually do all this work, and you know all this work, and yet when they actually say you've got a PhD, you think, really? Isn't it something I should be doing? Aren't I missing something? So anyway, I was like that. And so then I had to decide what to do next with my career. And although I'd really enjoyed working on these rocks, and mafic and ultramafic rocks and so on, I just could not see myself continuing doing that from a research point of view. So I decided not to pursue research at that point. And I got a job, it was a difficult time to get a job in the minerals industry at that point. It was one of the selected lows, but I managed to get a job in Australia. So I left, and went to Australia. So that's the picture actually on the far left. Bottom left is me, about a year after I'd been there. And we're standing in Kalgoorlie. I lived in Kalgoorlie, which is a town in Western Australia, which is a gold mining town. And they have a horse race there every year. All these people dress up with hats and things and come to the horse races. So we're at the horse races. So while I was at grad school, a few other things happened. We went on a field trip to Mexico, as you can tell, essentially by the hats. I went into the Rockies and did some hiking, and I met this person who's hiding in the middle over there. So we were fellow grad students and decided to stick together. And the top picture is actually Tony Nordrut's group again. This is about 10 years after grad school, and that's Tony Nordrut again. But these are all that group. Most of these are the grad students who were around at the same time I was there, and so on. They've all done amazing things. It was a really good cohort of people that went off and did interesting things in different places. And some of them are in this photo too, so you get extra marks if you can spot people in this photo who are almost in that. So I can take a pause while you do that.
And are you the one with the white t-shirt in the Mexico photo?
I was not in the Mexico photo.
Oh.
That's interesting. You picked her out, but yeah. No. That's that. Yeah.
So some of you, that's Peter Lightfoot, who some of you met when you went to Sunbury.
Oh, yeah.
So he was the Chief Geoscientist for Valley. This guy is James McDonald, who featured in the picture with the cows before, and the cows, same guy who became Chief Geoscientist of BHP. So Taras Brinzia, who worked for Shell for many years and still does, and actually Larry Cackles has collaborated with Taras.
Well, you're in the back in the pink shirt.
I'm there.
No, in the upper picture.
I'm there. Yeah, that's it. You got one. Yeah. So this guy is Steve Barnes, and he is there in this photo. And Steve, when I moved in with Steve, and then I left actually, and then Anne shared the same apartment with Steve. And Steve was an amazing guy, very good geologist, but he was also decided to learn to play the guitar. So if you've ever shared an apartment with somebody who's learning to play the guitar, it's not really isn't fun at all. Ring, ring. Anyway, he's now an extremely accomplished musician. He lives in Perth in Western Australia, and he's had several bands. His wife has got an unbelievable voice, so they sing, play together. He has a radio show, and he works for CSIRO, and he's a very senior scientist at CSIRO. So you just can never guess, from my experience, you never would have guessed that he would become so good musically. So then I went to Australia. So this is me working in Australia. So when you arrive in Western Australia, working for a company, you get given a truck. So this is a Toyota Land Cruiser, old style Toyota Land Cruiser. But this big black thing here is a tank. Half of it was water, and half of it was extra gas. So you had to have lots of water for working in the desert, because the biggest, very benign place to work. Really, there's no nasty animals. There's a few snakes and a few spiders, but you don't really see them. But the biggest issue is that you run out of water, because you're out in the middle of nowhere and so on. So you carry a big tank of water, and two-way radios, like a hello, from my truck and so on. Talk to people. So off I went. We went on a field trip. We had soon after I was there was a nickel sulfide field trip, so I've been part of that for eternity. So I went on it. And the bus driver made a classic error. In Australia, when it rains, it doesn't rain very often, but when it rains, the rule is you stay on the road, because the road is compacted. And for some reason, the bus driver saw this puddle and decided to go around it, and the bus just went. So that's why we stopped wondering what to do next. Classic Western Australian mistake. Oh, sorry, I should explain that now, just quickly. So after a couple of years there, by that point, Anne and I were together in Western Australia. Then we moved to Eastern Australia, and we worked out of this town called Temora, which is about an hour flight west of Sydney. And we got involved in an exploration program, and it led to the discovery of a gold mine. So this was a gold mine that we were involved in the discovery of, and the draw. Anne spent a whole bunch of time mapping these hills before this whole period. And I was both out, so running around looking at other opportunities in this area. Subsequent work. It's now been mined, finished, and rehabilitated and so on. So reclaimed. So you actually wouldn't see it looking like that anymore. So it wasn't very big. And then from there I went to the UK. I worked out in the UK for a while, and but worked all over the world on behalf of the company I was with. I've been looking at projects in many different parts of the world. And then we moved to Salt Lake City, and we lived in Salt Lake City for 3 years. And worked mainly in the southwestern US, Arizona, Nevada a lot. And started working in British Columbia from there. I started looking at projects in British Columbia. And while I was doing that, I heard about a position at UBC for this new formed research group called the Mineral Deposit Research Unit. And so I applied for it, and surprised they gave me the job. So then we moved to Vancouver and to British Columbia, and to the Mineral Deposit Research Unit, which is MDRU. So I was there for 7 years as the director of it. And so we had incredible programs. We were well funded by a lot of companies, so we had big collaborative programs with lots of grad students working all over, mainly in British Columbia. And this is one of the areas that we did a lot of work in, which is the northwestern corner of British Columbia, called the Iskut area, or it's known as, some people call it the Golden Triangle, because it's got a lot of gold deposits and copper deposits associated with it. So, and it's absolutely spectacular country. It's a gorgeous country. It's a very severe country. It's not easy to get around. And so most of the work we did was helicopter supported mapping and working on projects and so on to try and understand and unravel the geology. But beautiful place to work when it's sunny, which it isn't very often. And one of the areas that I worked at a lot during that time was I got very involved with a project called Galore Creek. So Galore Creek is in this area. It's actually in the northwest corner of this northwest part of British Columbia, really quite close to Alaska. It's quite close to the border with Alaska. And it's a suite of alkaline rocks, intrusives and extrusives, which contain a lot of copper. So there's a serious amount of copper mineralization in the area. So it was just, again, a gorgeous place to work. And I worked there on and off for 20 years. I keep going back, keep getting drawn back there, because there's complexity there that we don't understand, and aspects of the geology that would be nice to figure out. So one of the things that's really interesting there is that these are alkaline rocks, so these ground crystals here are pseudoleucites, and you see pseudoleucites in intrusions along with these megacrystic feldspars, K-feldspars and so on, like these guys. There's actually igneous garnets in these rocks, so that's quite unusual. A melanitic garnet, which is a nickel, titanium-rich garnet. And then the alteration in the rocks is full of garnet as well. So there's a little less story here about doing research. It's when we arrived to do the research on this thing, there was all this drill core here, and we spread it out, and we looked at it, and we thought we should take representative samples. So some of these garnets are just beautiful, but we said we won't take the beautiful garnets because they're not representative. We don't take representative material, so we sampled lots of representative material, and we went back, and during the winter we started doing research on it. And the garnets turned out to be amazing. They had incredible compositional diversity, they had incredible zonation, oscillatory, and other kinds of zoning, and they had beautiful fluid inclusions in them. So there was so much to be learned from these garnets. But the crystals that we selected were all the bad ones, all the representative material, and it was really, really hard work. So the following summer, we had to have a special trip into Galore Creek to collect really good garnets instead of the rubbish we'd collected the year before. We were trying so hard to be good. We were trying working not to bias our sampling at all. We should have completely biased our sampling anyway. But nonetheless, and it was very funny. We went back in and we flew in with 3 of us in a helicopter, and we landed. And the helicopter pilot was a really nice guy who we'd got to know quite well at that point. And he was really excited. He wanted to help us because he thought, God, selecting garnets, that's when he said, he was moving boxes. He was saying, John, what about this one? What about this one? So we'd be running around collecting extra garnets. And they unlocked a whole story about this deposit. So it's a very cool thing. But it hasn't been, that piece of work hasn't been properly published, and it's still waiting to be finished. So that's work in progress. So after that period of time, I went back to the industry again. So I was quite happy working. I was on a contractual position, so I always knew at some point my contract would be up and I might not want to stay. But I had still in the middle of a contract when I got a call and asked me to apply for a job at this company called Teck. Unfortunately, because I'd worked with a lot of companies up in British Columbia at that point, I knew them well and I really liked the people there. So it wasn't, when I got offered the chance to go and work for them, it wasn't a very difficult decision. So I left academia. I went back to Teck and I worked as the Chief Geoscientist. So it was the most amazing job I've ever had. For 4 years, I basically didn't really report to anybody, and nobody reported to me, and I could do whatever I wanted. I mean, it was like a kind of a dream job. And then things started to go off. After about 3 or 4 years, it got worse. Suddenly, I got given a few extra people who had to report to me. Oh, okay, that's fine. Then a few more, and then I did this and did that, and life got more complicated. But first 4 years were magnificent. So I worked a lot in Chile. The bottom 2 pictures were in Chile. Top 3 pictures are all in Peru, so I got to go to a lot in Latin America, but I also worked in other places in Australia and Africa and so on. And then after I did that for about 7 years, I did that job, and as things were getting more complicated, they put me into a different role, so they made me vice president, which is all very cool, and I was looking after technology and some technical opportunities, looking for new technologies that could be applied for every aspect of the mining business. And also sustainability. So a lot of the work was around environmental issues and social issues as well as the technical issues. So I worked on, we had invented a new process for recovering copper, and this was a pilot plant that we ran in Brazil, and it produced this nice, beautiful copper plate. So that was kind of a cool moment. I still couldn't get my hands off rocks, because I like rocks. I met a few interesting characters. I got involved in process control, and then the social side of the business as well. So all of those things were sort of worked together on and gave me, basically I think when I started this job, I learned more in the next 4 years than I'd learned in my previous 40 years. Because everything I did here was new. I was working with mining engineers, mineral processors, metallurgists, environmental chemists. We had some genomic people working for us by then. We had biochemists. We had social people, social scientists. So like every day, I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, back up a bit, and I had to learn, and there were all these people reported to me, so which was okay, I guess. But anyway, it was a tremendous experience. And if you ever get an opportunity when you can actually do something different and and still obviously enjoy it and get paid for doing it, take it, because you learn so much. You just learn things that you would never learn by doing what it is you know really well. And you don't get those opportunities very often. You don't get them at the beginning of your career, obviously. You have to somehow get lucky at some point. But if you do get a chance, I'd recommend everybody take it. So this is corporate life. You have to play golf as a member of a corporate big company. So that's me in the Philippines hitting golf balls into a crater. That's about as close as I got to playing serious golf. This is safety. I don't think you can read that sign. It says danger falling ice. This is outside Juneau in Alaska. So as you can see, there's nothing above my head at all. I have no idea why that sign was there. There was no cliffs, there's nothing. And I'm quite sure the umbrella wouldn't have helped me if it had been falling ice. But anyway, it's kind of a little safety thing. I used it for safety talks after. You've got to do team building if you're in a company. So if you've got to do team building, you're not attached to these planks. You all have to work together and look at the planks and so on. It's all very silly, but very entertaining. And you have to look corporate and wear a tie and give talks.
Is that tall volcano? Tall? In the Philippines?
Yes, I think it is actually. Yeah. I can't remember.
It's an interesting spot to
Yeah.
hit balls.
So there was a guy up there doing that as a business. You have to pay $1 and you got to hit 2 balls into the crater. I mean, people are creativity, that's innovation.
Real big into the volcano crater.
And then this was the corporate bike team. So we did the ride to Kansas. So we rode from Vancouver to Seattle. So we were all dressed up. So companies are companies, and you do a lot of things in companies that you don't do in other walks of life. And some of those things are fantastic, and some of them are not so good. So these were all really fun things that I got to do. So I have no complaints. And then I decided, as you may have realized by now, my attention span is limited. And so after another 7 years, I decided that was enough, and I couldn't figure out what I was going to do next in the company, and so I thought, well, that's a good time to leave, so I left. And as I left, which was my plan, was to take a year or 6 months, a year, and think about life and come up with some brand new project to work on. And almost immediately, this Cornell position came up, and I applied to it and got it, so I came to Cornell. So this is the reason I'm here. This is John Wold. So this is John Wold. He funded this position, the Wold Family Chair. And here he is, when I first met him, and I think at that point he was 97, he lived, or 96 perhaps, and he died last year at the age of 100, so he made it over 100 and so on. And he's still in his mid-90s here, cruising around outside. We walked for a mile out to see some tent rings and so on. And that night I played ping pong against him. He had macular degeneration, so he couldn't see really well. But if the ball was close to him, he would whack it and he'd beat me. So as long as I kept the ball away from him, it was okay. But he was a pretty amazing guy. And then I had these 3 kind of average okay students. They were all really amazing. And one of the reasons why I came to Cornell was that I already knew about Cornell. I already knew the university. And that's because my oldest daughter, Kate, came here as an undergraduate. So she was here for 4 years. And that was about 2 years before I arrived, so she couldn't believe that was ridiculous. She said, "What? I was there for 4 years, and then you wait." And she really actually overlapped with you almost.
I was going to say, when she graduated.
She graduated in 2011.
2011.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she did do a course in this building. She did Rick's course in this building. She was a microbiologist, so most of what she did is microbiology. Of course, then when she left, she did other things, which I'll explain in a moment. And now she's doing a PhD in geomicrobiology. So it took her a while to get the geo, but it's all good progress. And then that's my family. So family is super important to me and been a big part of my life. And so the Kate you just saw, this is Kate in her early years being indoctrinated in geology. She was probably saying, "I don't see the bacteria. Where are the bacteria?" And I was trying to teach her about geology. I've always been heavily involved in sport, and so when I didn't play sport, which I still used to play until relatively recently, whenever I could, I coached it. So I was a soccer coach for 15 years. So I coached all ages from 5-year-old kids all the way up to 40 to 50-year-old kids. And they were the most difficult. The latter group were the most difficult. The young ones actually really quite straightforward. You just had to point in the right direction and say go, which was really hard at half time because they were in the wrong way. But the older women who I coached for a few games at a Masters, Global Masters, World Masters, I think it was called. You were on the team, so
It was. Those were my teammates that were difficult.
They didn't like to be substituted.
No, they cried on the sidelines. It was ridiculous.
This 50-year-old woman comes up and starts crying, and I say, what? So So
We were
I'm
committed.
good with crying
We were
people.
committed.
I like to cook and I like to go to the pub. And so this is Kate again, my daughter. So one of the things she did when she was here at Cornell, she was a field hockey player, and she ended up on the Canadian field hockey team. So this is at the World Cup, an Olympic qualifier in India that she went to. So she did that for a couple of years. And then these two are her twin sisters. So that's Becky and Helen. So we're a pretty happy family. So, now comes to the interesting part, because now we're going to step in the future. That was all about what I've done. So now that you're going to help me. So I'm, as you may have gathered by now, I like doing a lot of different things. And so I've always had tremendous interest. I get interested in things very quickly, and I love to learn. So I'm a generalist, and I make no apology for that. It's just what I've been drawn to through my career. I do like doing detail work. I do like getting stuck into problems. But after a while, any problem for me wears thin, and I look for something new and different to do. So I've been doing that all my career, and I'm not about to stop now, so I'm going to be doing different things. So I already have a consulting business, so I will do some consulting to a few companies. I have 3 board positions, and they're all really fun and really different. So everyone is actually a junior exploration company, so it's doing exploration actually for gold and copper. And they have a really cool project in Mexico, which they're drilling right now, so that might be kind of quite nice. MineSense is a mining technology company. So that's the project in Mexico that everyone is drilling right now, and as you can see, there is a bit of gold in the pan. They actually broke up some rock and just panned the rock, and there's gold, so it's kind of cool. MineSense is a mining technology company, so what they do is they have sensors on this shovel. So this is a shovel that picks up 90 tons of rock in one lift and drops it in this truck. This truck takes 300 tons of rock. And across, you can't see it, but on the other side of the shovel there are a series of sensors that detect the copper concentration in the rock as the shovel is picking it up. So they do thousands of analyses scanning the surface of these rocks, and in about 1 minute, as the shovel lifts it and swings around, it tells the driver whether it's good rock, above a certain concentration, or bad rock. And then it takes 3 shovels to fill this truck, so then it'll do an average for this truck, and it'll tell the truck that this is all grades, should be processed, or it's waste and should not be processed. And this is a level of information that no mine currently has, so it's like a breakthrough technology that gives them brand new information and helps them optimize what they do. And the idea is to process less rock, which doesn't contain metal. So it's showing it all through at great expense and at great energy cost through a mill. You only put through the mill the stuff that contains the copper.
What do they use, like an XRF?
It's XRF, yeah.
Yeah.
But so here's the thing. So this is XRF. So
Yeah.
back to my graduate days, I did XRF. So I'd crush the rock, grind the rock, melt the rock, fuse the rock, press the pellet, stick it in overnight, and vacuum, fiddly, messy, come back and interpret data. This is doing this dust, water, vapor, a meter off the rock, thousands of analyses in a minute. So
How accurate is it?
it's accurate enough. So it's not
enough.
research accuracy,
Right, but
but it's accurate enough.
what percentage
So
of
I can
it,
tell
like,
the
are
difference
you-
between 0.1 and 0.15 copper.
grade, you mean?
Yeah,
Percent.
concentration.
Percent.
Yeah.
Oh,
Percent.
percent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's down to
fascinating.
5,000 ppm.
Yeah.
Kind of.
That's crazy.
That's good enough.
For a
For this
truck,
purpose.
for a
Yeah.
3-ton truckload, or no, you said 300
100
tons
Yeah.
truckload.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is it similar to like the handheld XRF that they're using
Same
for,
principle.
like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But on a much bigger scale, much
Yeah.
more energy in the emitter. Yeah.
How many XRF were broken?
A lot. So the first time they put them on one of these things, they got these shaking tables and they just shook them until they broke, and then they made them bigger and harder, and then they shook them again until they broke. They, right, we're good. This is up to several Gs. They put them on these things that lasted about an hour. Because every time this door opens on the bottom, it's like being slammed into a brick wall. So the door opens, all this rock falls out, and then the door slams shut again, and then it goes around and turns and it starts digging. And there are rocks the size of this bookcase flying into this thing, just pouring into this thing. So the vibration on this thing is ridiculous, as we found out. So we thought we had it done, and it was just. Then we went to the military and said, how do you do the vibration? If you're in a tank getting bombed, what would you do to make sure that the thing survives? I mean, I'm not kidding this.
So we're, sorry, how many, is this going to go to market soon?
So it's being tested right now by 4 different companies in different mines, and it's all being well, will be, the first commercial actual deal will be done before the end of the year.
And how much is that going for? Like, what's the deal?
So
Depending on
it's a
like.
much longer conversation. But
I'm just kind
so,
of curious. Like,
so-
and how much will they expect to save? Like, that's huge
so the value proposition for
Yeah.
a big copper mine is hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right. Okay.
And so the deal they're trying to do is to get a little bit of that extra amount of money.
Mhm.
So they're not selling it for a fixed price. They're not saying
Right.
it costs this.
Yeah.
They're saying, well, how good is this going to be for you? Okay,
Right.
this is what we want to charge you. So it's a complicated negotiation. Okay, so that's that. So then I also work with a group called Resolve, who are in Washington, D.C. They're a not-for-profit company, a really fun thing. And one of the things they're doing is they're doing stream rehabilitation in Alaska for old placer mining areas and restoring it such that it'll be fit for gold. And in the process of doing the restoration, they're recovering the gold. So hence the Sun Gold. So they're going to sell it as an exclusive special gold product to the electronics and jewelry industry. Kind of cool gold that's health conservation. And it's very cool, so that's what I do. And ASM stands for Artisanal Small Miners, so that's all the local miners, the 100 million people in the world who work in small mining. So they're doing lots of things around that to help them. And the last one, which is down here, so I'm the chair of the board of Genome BC, so that's a genomic research organization in Vancouver that funds genomic research. Mainly about 80% is health related, but about 20% of it is on all sorts of other things, including salmon and natural resources and so on. So passive water treatment is, can be enhanced by understanding the genomics of some of the microorganisms. So that's another fun thing that I do. So if you want to know more about Resolve, you should look at this video. So this is a 7-minute long video that they were involved in making about artisanal mining and so on. And what they did, this group of people, Resolve and Teck and other people involved to certify this mine as clean, environmentally clean, and no social issues, no child labour, no black market gold and so on, such that then this mine in the Congo could sell its gold again to the electronics industry and so on. So it's a certified thing. It's a really cool, it's a 3D VR movie, and it's one, as you can see, a whole bunch of awards. 7 minutes long, so highly recommend that. And I'm going to leave you with the end. This is the end. This is a quote from Fred Cornell, the famous Fred Cornell, about the glamour of prospecting. And for all the he's, you can read she's, but this was written in 1920, so in fairness, that wasn't that top of mind, but it should be better. I particularly like one of my better known skills, which is my excellence with the blowpipes. That's
I
all.
like the phrase that comes after, but unless he has the love of wild places in his bones, he will never fulfill his purpose.
So this is me. The more massive